All right, man, peace. So it seems as if the stock on the Houston Rockets grows by leaps and bounds every month. No other than Mr. Jeff Van Gundy, who has been a Houston Rockets doubter for the majority of the NBA regular season, has now stated that he believes that the Houston Rockets are just as good as, if not maybe even possibly able to beat the Golden State Warriors, and that whoever wins their series will definitely be the NBA champion. Of course, they're going to talk about it. I'm going to chime in.
To it. The Houston Rockets have officially made our Jeff Van Gundy a believer. Listen to this.
I've been saying for the past month that they're the second best team by far to Golden State. And now I'm willing to say they're as good as Golden State right now. I think their roster has dramatically changed in the last 12 months.
What I notice most about the Houston Rockets is that they have a tremendous amount of synergy. They play extremely well together. They have role players who have accepted their role, and that is one of the main barriers that good teams have to break through in order to become championship teams. Role players have to accept their roles. A lot of people don't understand just about every player in the NBA was all-state in high school in basketball. And it does take a period of transition to go from being the number one option on your high school team and sometimes even your college team to being a role player in the NBA. You have a guy like Marcus Smart, who in college was considered a top point guard. Now he's a role player on the Boston Celtics, and he accepts his role, which is why he's become very effective. The Houston Rockets have a lot of players on their team who have accepted their role, and a lot of that also comes along with the fact that most of their team is filled with players in their late 20s, early 30s. They're ready to get the championship right now. And of course, James Harden and Chris Paul have meshed together unbelievably well. Also keep in mind that Jeff Van Gundy used to be the coach of the Houston Rockets about 10, 11 years ago. He's now a great analyst because he keeps it 100.
Daryl and his staff have done a tremendous job, and Mike continues to get the very most out of this talented roster. And so I think they're hungry. Knock on wood, they're healthy. And I think that Western Conference final between Houston and Golden State is really the championship.
Keep in mind, Jeff Van Gundy has also been involved in a lot of policy changes in the NBA. He was the one who really started to push for a lot of the anti-flopping provisions, thankfully, because the 2000s were filled with a bunch of actors in the NBA. Going into the early 2010s, everybody falling over. If the wind blew, these guys were falling over, especially LeBron and D. Wade and Chris Paul. Those guys were the biggest floppers in the NBA, and Ginobili.
H-Town officially swaying Van Gundy. Max?
Yeah.
Do you agree?
Welcome to the party, Coach and everyone. I've been telling you guys this for a long time this year. In fact, before the season started and the Thunder made all these moves, I thought the Thunder might be the runner-up to Golden State, but I said, we got to keep our eye on the Rockets. And pretty early...
So did I. I thought that the Thunder would certainly be the biggest contender for Golden State. And it seems as if the Thunder may not even make the playoffs. The way that they're trending, they may not make the playoffs. The Rockets have blended together far better because their style of play is much more conducive to the modern NBA. Long-range shooting, multiple players who can dribble, pass, and shoot, great pick-and-roll play, big men who are mobile. Very, very, very well constructed.
Early on, it was obvious. You know when it was obvious? When they never lost when they were healthy. Think about this for a second. When the Rockets have been fully loaded, like when that's the roster you're going to see in the postseason, and the three that you can say that about is obviously Harden and CP3 with Clint Capella. When those three play together, they have one loss on the season. On the season, they are 32-1. The one loss was on the road to a Pelicans team that had AD and Boogie. Remember, Boogie got hurt at the very end of that game with 10 seconds left by one basket. That's their only loss.
Yes, that is their only loss, but does that speak to how great they are? Does that speak to the lack of depth in the Western Conference? The Western Conference is a bit overrated in regards to how good they are. There's not much depth there. I do believe that Houston has the potential to be a great team, but they're going to have to show me in the playoffs. The referendum on them will come in the playoffs, as it will for their two top players, James Harden and Chris Paul. They have a lot to prove.
Their only loss was by a single possession.
And they should have lost this Boston game last Saturday. Kyrie kind of came up small in the big spots. Now, in the subsequent game, Kyrie sat out because of a knee issue. It did seem as if he had an issue with his explosiveness in the game against the Rockets.
On the road to a fully loaded Pelican squad, who, by the way, don't look now, is 4th in the West, making their move on 3rd in the West. That's the only loss, and you're going to have to take this Rockets team. And you're not going to have to beat them instead of once, 32-1, to make them 32-4. Nah, you're going to have to make them 3-4. You have to beat them 4 times in a 7-game series.
Yeah, but I mean, people like Max Kellerman are so unbelievable to me that this is a television sports analyst. If we figured out one thing over and over again, not only in the NBA, but in the NFL, in Major League Baseball, in hockey, wherever, playoffs are different from the regular season. When you look down the Rockets' list of teams that they have defeated to go 32-1 with all 3 of those players in the lineup, you're going to see Orlando, you're going to see Phoenix, you're going to see the Mavericks, you're going to see a bevy of subpar NBA teams. When you get to the playoffs, you're going to have game plans that are going to be very detail-oriented in regards to what they're going to allow as opposed to what they're going to be ready to give up. Defenders are going to be closing out on jump shooters much better, especially when they get to the 2nd and 3rd rounds.
The Warriors will be favored to do it. But they are the only ones, and it is far from certain that the Warriors beat the Rockets. Welcome to the party, everyone. I don't know what took so long.
The Warriors are going to have to show their A game. The fact of the matter is that the Rockets and the Warriors basically have the same record, and the Rockets have been completely focused throughout the regular season, and the Warriors have, for the most part, been coasting. That does not spell well for the Rockets in the playoffs should they meet. That's all I'm going to say right now. People have made a big deal about how many games Harden and Paul and Capella have missed and how well they played when they're all in the lineup. Well, Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, Draymond have missed a lot of games as well. And once again, they're only a half game back.
Be careful about what you say about everyone, because I'm not on that list. That's number one. But if you don't mind, y'all, I should have stopped you before you started the show, because I just wanted to tell the world that this past weekend, excuse me for deviating from sports, I actually marched my little niece down the aisle.
Hey.
Walked her down the aisle, my little niece Chanel. She got married, and Uncle Steve had to walk her down the aisle. So it's a very, very proud moment.
Mazel tov, Chanel.
And her husband Roy is a good kid. I like him. Roy.
Well, hopefully Chanel don't look like you, brother. No disrespect. No disrespect at all. But I'm just imagining you right now with a wig on, and that's not a good look. So hopefully she inherited her DNA from the other side of the family.
Roy Champion is a good kid.
Like the name.
Way to go. I just want to say that.
Of course, sure.
I got a little emotional. I was touched by that.
All good. Family first.
Now, back to the deal. It ain't everybody. And here's why it's not everybody. You have to look at the competition.
Thank you, sir.
I look at Eric Gordon and I say, I like Eric Gordon. I like Eric Gordon a lot. 29 points, 7 3-pointers. Do I think that's going to happen? No, I don't.
I will say this about Eric Gordon. Eric Gordon is a wild card. He's someone that whoever's guarding him is going to have to watch out for. And much is made of the fact that oftentimes in the Golden State defensive game plan, Steph Curry is put on one of the lesser offensive players. People make a huge deal about that as if to imply that Curry is a terrible defender. No, he's not a terrible defender. He's actually a very good defender. His problem is that he's guarding the best position in the NBA right now. And it's just so funny to me that everyone talks about how poorly he guards the opposing team's point guard, but they never talk about how he lights Kyrie up for 40-something, or he lights Chris Paul up for 40-something, or he lights Westbrook up for 40-something. No one calls them bad defenders. But in that series, they are going to put Curry in the position where he's either going to have to guard James Harden, Eric Gordon, or Chris Paul. And whoever he's guarding is who they're going to be targeting on the offensive end. Just like in that Bad Boys documentary, Isaiah Thomas stated that in their game plan, they were told by Chuck Daly, whoever Magic Johnson is guarding is who is going to attack on the offensive end. Magic happened to be guarding Joe Dumars, so Joe Dumars went on the attack. That is going to be a major issue when they do meet up, and I believe that they will meet up sometime in late May or whenever the Western Conference Finals are going to take place. Curry's going to have to either guard Harden, Chris Paul, or Eric Gordon. And they're going to focus their offense through whoever the player is that Steph Curry's guarding.
I don't believe that's going to happen. I look at Clint Capella, who's averaging about 14 points a game. Do I think that's going to happen? Possibly. He could possibly do some damage. But when I look at the Houston Rockets, I'm telling you right now, one of the things that I pay attention to is the breakdown ability of James Harden and CP3. And all I find myself asking myself is, are you going to be able to get those open shots for the other guys, the Trevor Arizas of the world, the Gordons of the world, the Ryan?
What you're also going to have to ask yourself, Stephen A., is will James Harden be able to avoid those 6 for 26 games that he has in big moments? It is very common for James Harden to shoot very poorly in big games. He shot poorly in this game against Boston on Saturday. Even though he was at home, he shot something like 6 for 18. The referees bailed him out again as usual. But in the playoffs, where teams have a more detail-oriented game plan, you'll see they're going to guard James Harden up close, and they're going to make sure that they have their hands in the air so that the refs cannot give him cheap whistles.
Ryan Andersons of the world, the PJ Tuckers of the world. Are you going to be able to get those shots off? My answer is, I contend that answer to be no. And that is just where I'm at with it. I am sorry. I love what I'm seeing from the Houston Rockets. I believe they're big time. If you want to make the argument and all we're saying is that they're the most formidable, fine, so be it. But I'm talking about what kind of legitimate shot do I give them to beat the Golden State Warriors. It still, for me, has not elevated above 20%. I still stand by that position.
I think that's a bit low. I would give them anywhere from a 30 to 35% chance right now to beat Golden State.
And I don't care what Jeff Van Gundy has to say, nothing but mad love and respect for the great Jeff Van Gundy, who does a phenomenal job for us. I understand where he's coming from, because when you sit at these games, you marvel at the greatness that you witness. But I pay attention to who that greatness is against. It's not just about how you look. It's about who you look great against.
Absolutely. And Max Kellerman should understand that as much as anyone. He's a boxing analyst. He understands the importance, or he should understand the importance of matchmaking. There are certain fighters who are put in the ring with other fighters that are there to make them look good. It's easy for Houston to look great against Orlando and Charlotte and the Dallas Mavericks and the Phoenix Suns. Let's see how they do in the playoffs when they're going to be very, very diligently comprised and composed game plans to stop what they're trying to do. Then we'll find out how great they are. I would love to see them in a first-round matchup against the New Orleans Pelicans. I don't think that's going to happen because I think New Orleans is going to be too high in the seeding. But I would like to see them go against New Orleans.
I mean, damn. When you look at the Warriors, excuse me, I'm not worried about that. Regular season stuff, first of all, season opener, can't worry about that. By the way, CP3 and James Harden together, 34 and 3. Come on, y'all. We know they're great, but
the key for Golden State against the Rockets, and Steve Kerr understands this very clearly, is going to be JaVale McGee. That is why they've rested JaVale for the majority of the early portion of this season. Because I think that Steve Kerr, through scouting, has come to understand that there's no way in the world that Zaza Pachulia is going to be able to guard Clint Capella. Not on those rim runs. You're going to need a very mobile big man. And the best they have is JaVale McGee, as well as giving some minutes, some playing time to that rookie that they have, the young brother with the flat top. I can't remember his name. One of you brothers can correct me in the comments.
34 and 3, everything is flowing right now. And I want to
32 and 1 with Clint Capella.
Excuse me, Mr. Migraine. Don't interrupt me when I'm speaking. Calm down. Because here's the this. All right, it's all right, because I got you covered, brother. Here's the point that I'm trying to make to you, Max Kellerman. We sit up there, and you keep talking about these guys. But at the end of the day, we got to take into consideration not just the level of competition, but who they are. Golden State Warriors were in cruise control half the time. You saw what they did against Oklahoma City a couple of weeks ago. You know why they did that? Because Oklahoma City had beaten them twice.
Absolutely. That was the point of the video that I made about that, in which Zaza Pachulia pulled their card. Golden State had to show Oklahoma City, you beat us playing our D game. We're going to give you a little bit of our A game. We're going to get up in your chest and we're going to guard you for 94 feet. And we're going to watch you crack like a fucking egg. That's what we're going to watch you do. Because those three top guys on Oklahoma City are all mentally fragile. Westbrook, Carmelo, and Paul George. They're all mentally fragile. They can all be broken. Every last one of them. Westbrook, people might say, well, Westbrook is hardcore. You can't break him. Yes, you can. Because Westbrook doesn't know what to do when the situation gets hectic. He just panics and just starts diving to the basket, trying to penetrate and dunk over everybody. And that's why he ends up in big games shooting 7 for 28. Westbrook is not a championship level point guard. I don't care what anybody says. He plays great, but he is not a great player. Certain people might not like. Some people might not like that. It's okay.
And All-Star break was over. And they're like, you know what? We're tired of this noise. It's time to put y'all on notice. Who the hell y'all think y'all playing with? Let me pump the brakes on this right now.
Absolutely. And that was essential. That was very, very important for Golden State to spank them like that. Because OKC was going through the regular season, pumping themselves up. Even though they were losing to subpar teams, they were telling themselves, when the playoffs come, we're going to turn it up another notch because look at how we're playing against Golden State. Golden State had to show them in the regular season that no, when you get to the playoffs, if you get there, you're going to get blowed out.
And I think a legitimate argument can be made that is the reality here. And to me, if I saw a ball movement and that was what was going on, that would be different. But Chris Paul and James Harden are so sensational and they break you down one-on-one. That's going to work against almost anybody else. It will not work against Golden State.
Well, it's going to work against Golden State. It's going to be a matter of can what Golden State does work better against Houston than what Houston does work against Golden State. Because it's not going to be a sweep. And I don't think it's going to be a 5-game series. I think it's going to go at least 6. And it's going to come down to game planning and adjustments. And that is where Golden State is going to beat the Rockets. In addition to that, I can see CP3 and Harden lose their composure, especially in a very, very close series. In crucial moments, I think that they're going to come up short because that's what they've done for the majority of their career. To be quite honest with you, if I was wrong, I wouldn't mind it at all because I wouldn't mind seeing CP3 get a championship. He's an older player. He's done a lot for the NBA. In the last 12 years, he's been in the league or so, and I wouldn't mind seeing him win a championship or Hardhead for that matter. It would bring a little bit of nuance to the NBA to have a third team in there that could be considered a championship contender. I wouldn't mind, to be quite frank with you, I wouldn't mind seeing the Rockets go against the Boston Celtics in the finals. I think that'd be a great finals. They played 2 great games. Boston against them or Boston against Golden State would be a great finals to me.
We hear Paul Pierce on Countdown. He said they're short an all-star.
Well, listen, I understand what he means because
I agree with Paul. I think that they're going to be one all-star short. That's why it would not surprise me to see them try to court LeBron James, even though I don't think that would be a good mix. But who knows? If LeBron comes there, he's going to have to be the ball handler, with Harden and CP3 playing more off the ball.
Because ultimately the history of the league has been, if you look at playoff teams, stack the talent up, see how, the matchups and all that stuff, and the way the talent is distributed is important. But Golden State was where Houston is now, and then they added Kevin Durant.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's the point. And I think that difference in another transcendent player is going to show when they finally meet up. The Houston Rockets and their supplementary players, their role players, are going to have to play their darndest, their damnedest to nullify the Draymond Greens, the Klay Thompsons. That's why I stated that Eric Gordon matchup, whoever Steph is guarding, they're going to have to go lights out. Eric Gordon is going to have to outplay Klay Thompson in that series for them to have a chance to win.
I understand why people like him. You bring up Eric Gordon. I'm glad you did. He's overlooked on this Houston team.
I agree.
Recall Eric Gordon when he first came into the league. He looked like he was going to be a perennial, if not all-star challenger. Like every year, he'd be at least on the bubble of making the all-star team.
He's a player that can detonate. He's one of the great streak scorers in the NBA.
Got hurt a lot. He wasn't healthy a lot. But when Eric Gordon is on the floor, he's kind of that guy. So you bring up 18, 19 points a game. Stephen A., he had multiple seasons where he averaged 20 points a game plus. I mean, Eric Gordon is, when I talk about 5-star, my 5-star system, 5-star MVP caliber, 4 all-star, 3 a starter, 2's a rotation piece, 1 is replaceable, right? Just above G League. Eric Gordon's not 3. Eric Gordon's a 3.5. He's not just a starter. He's like, hey, if Eric Gordon's healthy, or if you put Eric Gordon on another team where his usage rate went up, or you featured him more, he might be an all-star. I think.
I agree with that. I'll give you that one, Max. I'll give you 3.5 on Eric Gordon. I don't agree on some of your 5-star guys, but, Eric Gordon, I give him 3.5. No, but that's pushing it. Maybe more like 3.25. Because once again, I would give a guy like James Harden 4.5. I would not give him 5 stars. I know that some of you brothers may disagree with that. Once again, the only 5-star players in the NBA to me are LeBron, KD, Steph, and Kawhi when Kawhi's fully healthy. Anthony Davis is right there. He's at like 4.7, 4.8. He's pushing 5. Right? He's about at 4.7, 4.8.
I think people sleep. So then if you look at it again and you think of Eric Gordon that way and you look what Clint Capella's doing, and then you have 2 MVP caliber players on the team, you'll feel a little bit differently about the Houston Rockets.
I just think that you're a bit emotional because you're desperately rooting for the Houston Rockets like the rest of us are, because we want something competitive going on, particularly against the Golden State Warriors.
That, and also Max likes to be ahead of the curve so that he can say, I told you so, if he ends up being correct. Like if Tom Brady falls off next year, you're never going to hear the end of it from Max Kellerman.
I can understand and I can appreciate that, but I have an obligation to analyze the game of basketball. I recall teams being very, very successful during the regular season, only to collapse come postseason time. And I'm looking at Houston and I'm saying to myself, I don't expect to collapse. I don't expect them to get bounced out before the conference finals, but I do look at them and say, that one-on-one ability, do you really think that's going to work against the Warriors?
Wait, real quick, let me ask.
I don't see the Rockets as being primarily a one-on-one team. I think that they're a team that demands constant motion, having consistent shooters on the outside as threats, and having 2 great penetrators in James Harden and CP3. They have to be able to beat their man or be a threat to beat their man to the basket so that they can force the help that will allow for the alley-oops that are going to break down a defense mentally. Those alley-oops, they break down a defense mentally because then it gets the defenders unsure of whether they want to help or whether they want to stay home.
Let me ask you this. Do you think it's the championship, though? That part of his statement was accurate?
Of course.
That's the championship for
Who doesn't know that? It's always been in the Western Conference Finals are usually the championship.
It's not the real championship.
Yeah, I will tell you this much. We were debating. You remember when we talked about Cleveland earlier and we said, well, even if they get to the finals, I would say if they get to the finals, rather, if Houston were to knock off Golden State, then obviously Cleveland could knock off Houston or whatever. Houston is looking formidable enough for all.
Cleveland is not beating anybody that comes out the West. Cleveland is not beating anyone that comes out the West. If LeBron, by some miracle, is able to get that team back to the finals, and even though I call it a miracle, I will still pick Cleveland, believe it or not. I have to see a team beat LeBron 4 times in the East for me to say that they should no longer be considered the favorite, which is most likely going to be a moot point anyway because LeBron is probably going to leave Cleveland after this season. But I have to see it. I have to see Toronto or Boston or one of those teams beat them before I believe it. But if they are able to come out of the East, they're not beating any of the top 2 to 3 teams out of the West. If New Orleans was to make it to the finals, I don't think that Cleveland would beat them.
All of us to say, whoever wins between them and the Warriors ain't losing.
Yep.
But
I will say that.
That has a lot to do with the Cavs' struggles, too. Because when the Cavs look energized, all of a sudden it's like, well, what if they matched up with Houston? No. This
We'll
Cavs
be getting
team
into that
got no wins against Houston.
I think that Boston would have a far better chance against Golden State or Houston than the Cavaliers would. I will give the Cavaliers maybe a 10% chance to beat either one of those teams. I will give Boston a 25 to maybe even almost 30% chance to beat either one of those. Well, I give them maybe a 30% chance to beat Houston. I would give them probably a 20% chance to beat the Warriors. Boston, I'm talking about. And I would love to see them in the finals because I think that they would be very competitive.
Houston, I want to bring up one thing about what you're saying about matchups. I appreciate all that. I think you're just kind of rushing past 32-1, and the 1 was by a possession with Boogie and AD. You're never going to have to see that again. Boogie's gone for the season. That doesn't happen by accident.
Yeah, it doesn't happen by accident, but the problem is that James Harden and Chris Paul, they have such a low amount of equity due to their playoff flameouts that so many people are just looking past whatever they're accomplishing in the regular season, and justifiably so. They have a lot to prove, man.
That is a huge sample size. They have basically made the statement that when fully loaded, they're unbeatable. Now, that will change in the playoffs, I agree with you. But you go from unbeatable, basically never losing, to losing 4 out of 7. When you say 80% chance to win, that means what do you expect? If you apply those odds every game, you expect Golden State to close out Houston 4 games to 1?
I think that there would be less incredulity on Stephen A's part if there was no Golden State Warriors in the Western Conference. Then he would put a lot more stock in that 32-1 that you keep harping on. But Stephen A sees the same things that I'm seeing, which is that Houston is playing, with all hands on deck, all rocket blasters, at full bore. And it seems to me as if, and most likely to him as well, that Golden State has been cruising through most of the season, and they're only a half game back.
I don't see that. I don't see that as a 5-game series.
I'll tell you this much right now. I don't see it either, but it can happen. And let's understand why it can happen, because of their ability to defend.
I agree. I think that it's going to be a 6 or 7 game series between Golden State and Houston, but would I be absolutely shocked or floored if it was a 5-gamer? No, I wouldn't.
Nobody has the ability to defend. When Golden State amps it up and they lock down on you, particularly your perimeter shooters, you've got a problem. And that's what this comes down to. I know that Houston is 10th defensively, but in the end, do you really rely on them because of their defense? No, you rely on them because of their ability to shoot the basketball, and they've got 2 superstars in James Harden and CP3.
They showed us they can play at 2 different paces as well. Guys, let's talk about...
But anyway, that is it on the Houston Rockets and Jeff Van Gundy's assertions about their viability for being the NBA champions for this season. We'll see what happens. Anyway, peace.